What's up, everybody? It's the 31st of August, 2024. My name is Derek. Welcome back to this, the 83rd edition of the Superstream. And a jam-packed one we'll have today. Might go about an hour and a half with this video. Got a ton to talk about. A lot of related news from the past week. And we're going to focus on the world of sports today. The other day, we learned that Johnny Gaudreau, an active NHL player, passed away at the age of just 31. And this is a pretty rare event in major sports. But we're going to talk about how his death by a drunk driver is connected to the debut of an F1 driver named Kimi Antonelli, who has been hyped as the future of the sport, a potential future champion, and confirmed for a seat with Mercedes next year. So let's dive right in, and we start with the number on the Superstream, 83. Using the reversed alphabetic order, murder sums to 83. And these are the two digits that make an appearance on the Murder by Numbers poster, a film from back in 2002. And as part of this murder code, we're going to be focusing a lot on Yale University, which is still 322 years old, and how this school connects to a lot of the death that we're seeing in the media. So, of course, here's a quick look at the Gematria ciphers that we use. It all starts in the alphabetic order and then branches off into the base 4 ciphers. There's more links in the description below if you want to learn more about this, or simply check out the calculator at gematrinator.com. So to kick things off today, we're going to talk about Formula One and yesterday's debut in practice of Kimi Antonelli, an Italian driver making his debut at the Italian Grand Prix. Now, after successfully completing one fast lap, putting him at the top of the entire field, he crashed during his second lap. And I made a tweet about this yesterday over on X, explaining the numerology of this debut. Using the alphabetic order, the name Kimi Antonelli sums to 187. And on the date of Sunday's race, he'll be 18 years and 7 days. And of course, think about this, 187, in relation to this murder code. A lot of people know 187 as slang for the penal code for murder. Well, 187 is 11 times 17, its prime factors, and the 187th prime number is 1117. There's really no other number like this that has a connection to the prime and prime factorization. And it just so happens that this weekend's race in Italy will be the 1117th Grand Prix in the history of Formula One. So what a perfect day for Kimi Antonelli to essentially 187 his car into the barrier. And he did this at the final curve on the track, which I'll talk more about in a second because even the corner name is connected. But a day prior, the safety car driver crashed at the same turn. And curiously, his name, at least the anglicized version of his name, Bert Mylander, also has this gematria of 187. 187 also the gematria of Society of Jesus. And again, this race is in Italy, which is where the Vatican is located. And we have Pope Francis, the first pope to be a Jesuit from the Society of Jesus, and also the first pope to be from Argentina. Well, Antonelli is not the only F1 driver to make his debut this weekend, as an Argentine driver named Franco Colapinto has been added to the Williams team, replacing Logan Sargeant, the only American driver. So in Italy, where Pope Francis is, we get another Argentinian, just like Francis, named Franco. So we'll certainly talk more about this riddle. But before we do, I want to look at this corner that Antonelli and the safety car driver both crashed at. This turn, the last at Monza, is called Curva Parabolica. Now think about this in relation to a parabola. When you graph all the Fibonacci numbers out, you end up with a parabola, right? And of course, this all connects to the golden spiral, where the golden ratio is of utmost significance. Well, using the Fibonacci form of Gematria, where only the first 13 Fibonacci numbers are used, the name Andrea Kimi Antonelli sums to 1618. And these are, of course, the first 4 digits of the golden ratio, 1.618. Right there in the Gematria, Andrea Kimi Antonelli, a name connected to the golden ratio, spinning off at a turn named Parabolica. So once again, I don't know who's writing these scripts, but someone who really knows what's going on, that's for sure. Now, what further connects these two men is Gematria. The name Kimi Antonelli, which as we see here is his common name, the name Kimi Antonelli equals 513 using the standard method. And the other new driver, Franco Colapinto, notice how his name shares the 513 value in our 2 primary standard methods. Franco Colapinto was born on May 27th. And May 27th is the same date in history that the Golden Gate Bridge first opened. The golden ratio, the golden spiral, the parabola, all syncing up with the Golden Gate. And of course, this bridge is located in San Francisco, reminding us how Pope Francis has this name that matches up. Pope Francis with the same 122 Gematria as the city of San Francisco. 122. A city which even sits on the 122nd Western Meridian. So all of this is very intriguing and, dare I say, proof of this matrix that the sports world exists within. But another huge part of this riddle will bring us to this story about the NHL player killed while cycling with his brother out in the nation, or the state of New Jersey. Thank God they're not a nation. So this guy, Kimi Antonelli, again, hyped up as the future of the sport and a potential future world champion. Well, just a couple years ago, we had the retirement of another F1 world champion with the same name, Kimi, K-I-M-I. Now, I haven't been following Formula One for a very long time, but long enough to know about this famous meme about Kimi Räikkönen. And I guess a few years ago, his pit crew was trying to explain to him that he would not be able to drink water during the race, that the system was broken, and it resulted in this really awkward conversation. And you can even find coasters with this meme imprinted on it. In fact, when you go check out F1's video on Kimi Antonelli, the very top comment is talking about Kimi, right? Kimi, will he get the drink? So this is a really popular meme. And think about how this guy, this NHL star, Johnny Gaudreau, was killed by a driver who had a little bit too much to drink. So we'll, of course, look at how this is all synced up by the numbers, but notice how these two Kimis, Räikkönen and Antonelli, were born 322 months apart from one another. And this 322 is going to walk us through most of this video, as once again, it's the skull and bones number that we've been talking about so frequently. In Gematria, the name Kimi Räikkönen sums to 140 in the alphabetic order. This NHL player, Johnny Gaudreau, was born on August 13th, which is the date that leaves 140 days in the calendar. Also, Gaudreau was born on a date with primary numerology of 133. And if you measure from his birthday back to Kimi Räikkönen's, you get 13 years and 300 days. 133, matching his birth numerology. But here's another huge connection with Kimi Räikkönen. Check out his middle name, Matthias. Kimi Matthias Räikkönen. Well, this guy, Johnny Gaudreau, he played for the Columbus Blue Jackets. And only once on my blog have I ever decoded the death of an active NHL player. And it just so happens that that player was also a member of the Columbus Blue Jackets. And I made a post back on this in 2021 because his death occurred on Independence Day. And the Blue Jackets, you know, they're in Columbus. Christopher Columbus, credited with discovering America. And they use the same red, white, and blue as America's flag. But anyway, that Columbus Blue Jackets player was named Matisse or Matisse. Very similar to Matthias. Matthias is sort of a combination of the names Matthew and Matthias. And this brings us to another famous hockey tragedy that occurred in October of last year, and one I spent a lot of time decoding. In October of last year, hockey player Adam Johnson was killed in England when another player's skate mistakenly slashed his throat, and he basically bled out on the ice. And the man's ice skate who killed him was a guy named Matthew. Now, Adam Johnson died on October 28th, which is the same date as actor Matthew Perry, also dead on October 8th last year. So you get all of these Matisse with the Kivleniks, the hockey player, Adam Johnson being killed by a Matthew on the same day as Matthew Perry dying. Well, Johnny Gaudreau was killed along with his brother, Matthew. I'm even getting chills just saying this. Like, what the hell is going on with this synchronicity? It's truly off the charts, isn't it? So with all of this synchronicity out of the way, let's dive into the numerology of the death of Johnny Gaudreau, killed by a drunk driver, all syncing up with Kimi Antonelli and the drink. On the date he was killed by a drunk driver, Gaudreau was a span of exactly 1,620 weeks old. And this number 1620 is important to America, as 1620 is the year embedded on the rock, the Plymouth Rock, which is where the Pilgrims reportedly first landed in America in that very year, 1620. The phrase drunk driver with the 1062, the same four digits. Drunk driver also has the same 153 gematria as Columbus, Ohio, where he played hockey. And he died 1,153 days after his former teammate Kivleniks, whose name also equals 153. So let's see how this connects to Yale University, the famous school with the Skull and Bones Secret Society. Of course, Yale, 322 years old, which is the number embedded on its famous secret society, Skull and Bones. The name Johnny Gaudreau sums to 326, with capitals mixed. He died a span of 326 days after Yale's 322nd anniversary. And the name of the city he died in has gematria of both 326 and 322. Oldman's Township, New Jersey, which, ironically enough, is a dry town. You can't buy alcohol there. Yet that's where he was killed by a drunk driver. Notice how this city also sums to 124 in reverse reduction. Gaudreau and his brother were killed on the date leaving 124 days in the year. Yale located in the city of New Haven, which equals 124. Furthermore, New Haven has matching 1699 gematria with Oldman's Township, New Jersey. But next up, I want to talk about the number 13, because this is very significant to the Skull and Bones Society. First, we start with future F1 superstar Andrea Kimi Antonelli, born on August 25th of 2006, which makes me feel super old. I mean, this guy was born after I turned legal drinking age. Holy shit. But the reason I point this birthday out is because he was born a span of 13 years and 13 days after the fallen NHL star Johnny Gaudreau. Skull and Bones has matching 130 gematria with human sacrifice in ordinal. Johnny Gaudreau's birthday was also 13 days before Matiss Kivlenic's birthday, the other Blue Jackets player who died. Johnny was born on the 13th day of the month. He also wore number 13 for the Columbus Blue Jackets. And back in 2022, he even signed with the team on the 13th day of the month. In Latin gematria, the number 13 sums to 347. Well, when he signed his contract on the 13th, he was exactly 347 months old. This is a number connected to sacrifice in Hebrew, also the Latin name of Christopher Columbus. And on top of all this, Johnny died 13 days before September 11th. And we'll talk about this 9/11 code a lot. One of the reasons is because the new F1 driver from Argentina, Franco Colapinto, when he got the call up to Formula One, he was exactly 1,109 weeks of age. And he's replacing the only American driver, America, where the 9/11 attacks happened. But back to this Skull and Bones code, which 9/11 is all a part of course. Matiss Kivlenic's, the other goalie who passed away 3 years ago. Check out his age when Johnny Gaudreau died. 10,231 days. This represents the number 1231, as zeros are commonly ignored in numerology. When Gaudreau signed with the Blue Jackets, it was during Brown Lunation 1231. Now, this is the 202nd prime number, bringing us to Skull and Bones in reverse, 202. The Columbus Blue Jackets were officially established exactly 202 weeks after Gaudreau was born. When Kivlenic's died, it was 202 weeks after the first Great American Eclipse, 202 days after the most recent total eclipse, and exactly 22 weeks before the next total solar eclipse. And in ordinal, total solar eclipse equals 202. Just like stars and stripes. Gaudreau now dead in the city of Oldmans Township, which equals 202. Remember, this is a number connected to car crashes. Car equals 22. The word crash equals 22. On the 22nd day of 2020, I witnessed a car accident. After thinking about this connection here, just as an aside. So this guy's name, Johnny, equals 22, and he died 2 weeks and 2 days after his birthday. The Columbus Blue Jackets were even formed exactly 220 weeks before the September 11th attacks, and September 11th equals 220. On 9/11, Gaudreau was 8 years and 29 days old. 8/29. And then he died on August 29th, or 8/29. Shout out to Cody in the chat, who pointed out to me that 9 of his 11 seasons were spent playing for the Calgary Flames before moving to America. Perhaps there's an America in Flames riddle here as well. And what I found interesting is that there's also skull and bones numbers connected to Christopher Columbus. Columbus would have been 572 years old for Gaudreau's death, which is the value of skull and bones in Latin. Columbus also has the 223 in his age. Skull and crossbones 223. There's also a major total eclipse riddle, as if what I showed already wasn't enough. But notice how Johnny Gaudreau was born in the city of Salem, New Jersey. Shout out to the Crowned Cultivators blog, who made this post talking about the 7 Salems. Back in 2017, the first Great American Eclipse passed over 7 different cities named Salem in the United States, which is a pretty remarkable thing on its own. So when Gaudreau signed his contract with Columbus, it was on the date 7/13. And 7/13 is the Gematria of total eclipse. He died 713 days before the next total solar eclipse. The date he signed can also be written as 13/7. Total eclipse and eclipse both 137. And on the date he signed, 1307, the Columbus Blue Jackets were exactly 1,307 weeks old. The team is located in Ohio, which equals 137. 137 is the 33rd prime number, and the word eclipse equals 33. The Blue Jackets were formed 303 days after Kivlenix was born. Kivlenix died 3 weeks and 3 days after the last annular eclipse. And these 2 Blue Jackets players died a span of exactly 3 lunar years and 3 months apart from one another. Now, a lunar year is 12 lunar phases. So these guys died exactly 39 lunations apart, 3 years and 3 months. And the name Gaudreau equals 33, just like the word alcohol. And shout out to Thomas in the chat. I'm going to try and answer your question after I finish this post here. The number 33 is also connected to the eclipse code because it equals 156. This is the Hebrew value for eclipse. And eclipses occur 1, 5, or 6 lunar phases apart from one another. The phrase eclipse the sun equals 156. And notice how the hockey player's full name, John Michael Gaudreau, equals 1056. He's also got the 222, which matches eclipse. His name also equals 1272, and the number 272 connects the size of the moon to the size of the Earth. But more noteworthy is the 415 in reverse with capital letters, because Johnny Gaudreau died at exactly 415 sidereal months, or lunar orbits, after he was born. A sidereal month differs slightly from a lunar phase, about 27 days compared to 29. And again, the lunar year is 12 lunar phases. So huge moon connections, but this has always been the case with the Blue Jackets. Notice how Matiss Kivlenieks, his name equals 1218. And when he died in 2021, on Independence Day, it was during Brown Lunation 1218. Stars and Stripes 1218. Now his teammate dies in Oldman's Township, which equals 1218. The name Johnny equals 32. The name Matiss equals 320. Not only were these two men born exactly 3 years and 2 weeks apart, but Gaudreau died at exactly 32 lunar years of age. So just as we saw, a lunar year, 12 lunar phases. And it just so happened that he died on his lunar birthday. 384 lunar phases. This is exactly 32 lunar years. And he also died on an exact sidereal count. So the moon is just huge here. The date of his death also has matching numerology with the name Matiss Kivlenieks, 81, 81, 45, and 45. There's more deep eclipse riddles, but before I get too deep into this, I just want to touch on how this connects to Kimi Antonelli, the F1 driver who debuted. His name equals 144 in the alphabetic order. And his F1 debut yesterday, August 30th, was 144 days after the Great American Eclipse. And if you include the end date, August 29th was also 144 days later. On that date, a hockey player from Boston College was killed by a drunk driver just before he stood up in his sister's marriage. And notice how all of these phrases sum to 144. So there's more deep connections here, but what I do want to mention before I move on to the next story is if you measure from the date that Gaudreau signed his contract with the Columbus Blue Jackets to the date of his death, he died in his 779th day with the team. And in Latin Gematria, the Star Spangled Banner equals 779. And that's an important number to the Star Spangled Banner. Think about how the man who wrote the Star Spangled Banner was born in the year 1779. So, real quick, before I move on to the next story, Thomas in the chat asked if I think he really died. Do I think that this is just some numeric riddle, or do I think Gaudreau was really killed with his brother? I don't know, and I'm not here to tell you what to believe. However, I will say that if I had to put money on it, yes, I do really think he died. Yes, I do think he was really killed by a drunk driver. Now, this synchronicity is not limited to our personal lives. Remember, we had the death of an NHL player or a former NHL player on October 28th. And this was all synced up to Matthew Perry. I did a lot of work on that. And there is video of this guy getting his throat sliced on the ice. You can look it up and watch it if you're a sicko like me. And it really happened, you know? And there's no way it was, like, staged. Okay? I mean, that's just crazy to believe, in my opinion. Just a couple weeks ago, I did a video on the organic matrix and how events in our personal lives are just as coded as everything in the media. And yeah, it's my belief that this stuff is playing out by the numbers because that's how the world works. Adam Johnson didn't go to work that day being like, oh, I'm going to get my throat sliced by an opponent so I die on the ice because it'll be a cool numeric riddle. To me, that's crazy. Okay? This stuff really is happening. It really is going down by the numbers. And it's because there really is a conscious entity pulling the strings of our reality. Some people call that God. Some people call it Yeshua, Yahweh. There's a lot of different terms. Elohim, for instance. But in my opinion, that's what we're decoding. The vast majority of the time, we are decoding nature. Nature is consciousness. This is a, quote, holographic reality that encompasses only the human mind. It's all an imaginative display. Or so I've come to believe through this study. I really do think that. So, you guys can disagree with me, that's fine. I'm just here to share facts. If you think that man really is scripting all of this, that's actually more impressive to me than if that was just how creation works. So, with that being said, and of course there is conspiracy. The government definitely sets things up by the numbers. I'm imagining that murder by numbers is a real thing, but the majority of the time, I think it's just nature. So that's my opinion. Moving on to the next story. The Williams F1 team, prior to this week's race in Italy, dumped Logan Sargeant, the only American driver on the grid, and replaced him with Franco Colapinto, the first Argentine driver since the year 2001. And 2001, the year of the 9/11 attacks, of course. The last Argentine driver to participate in F1 is this guy, Gaston Mazzacane. And check out his Gematria. 2119. Reminding us of the 9/11, right? Well, if you measure from his birthday to the birthday of Franco Colapinto, you get another 119. Or do you? Yeah, I must have had the wrong birthday in there, I guess. Anyway, let's check out the real numerology of this story. Again, Franco Colapinto having the same 513 gematria as Kimi Antonelli. With this number reflected, you get a 213. And when Franco was promoted to F1, he was exactly 21 years and 3 months of age. The name Colapinto sums to 333. And he was signed by Williams 3,330 days after the death of the last F1 driver to be killed from a crash, Jules Bianchi. Now, Jules Bianchi was a Frenchman. And things connected to France are often notated using the prefix Franco, right? And this guy's name is Franco, hearkening back to Pope Francis in Italy for the Italian Grand Prix. Well, he's going to be driving for the Williams team. And the Williams team was founded by a guy named Frank. So there's a strong France riddle here, and I previously had Leclerc pegged for a potential win at Monza. I'm not saying he'll win. He actually qualified 4th today, which is not very good for his prospects. We'll talk more about Leclerc as we go. And the reason Leclerc is connected is because Jules Bianchi was Leclerc's godfather. And when Leclerc got his first F1 win, it was a day after the death of Antoine Hubert, the last F2 driver to die. So Leclerc's whole career has been steeped in death since it started. Frank Williams died in 2021. It was the 333rd week after Jules Bianchi died. It was also 333 days after the birthday of Logan Sargeant, who Colapinto was replacing. Also 33 days before his next birthday. Frank died on the date leaving 33 days in the year, exactly 33 weeks before the anniversary of Bianchi's death. And now, Franco Colapinto gets signed to Williams exactly 33 months after Frank Williams died. And it was also 3 weeks and 3 days after Jules Bianchi's birthday. Remember, Formula 1 equals 33. Franco Colapinto's birthday is 5/27. Both Jules Bianchi and Skull and Bones has that special 527. And this brings us back to Yale University, the 322-year-old school. Franco was born 32 sidereal months and 2 days after the driver he replaced. And with capital letters, Franco Colapinto equals 322. He's an Argentinian, which equals 223. Not only was Yale 322 years old, but it was also 10 months and 19 days after their anniversary. And they're located in New Haven, which equals 1019. Colapinto exactly 1,109 weeks old. And think about the last Grand Prix before this announcement. That Grand Prix was won by Lando Norris, who had just finished his 119th Grand Prix. Jules Bianchi was born on a 119 date, and then he died on the date 7/17. Well, the date 7/17, this is connected to 119. 7 times 17, 119. Franco Colapinto was promoted 9 years, 1 month, 11 days after Jules died, or 109 months, 11 days. The last race that Jules Bianchi finished was the 911th Grand Prix. And now he's replacing Logan Sargeant. And during his career, Logan Sargeant finished 1,911 laps. And this is all synced up with the Williams team, right? Well, recently, I've been talking a lot about Robin Williams. I even put him in this video's thumbnail. Robin Williams starred alongside Shelley Duvall, and Shelley Duvall died exactly 119 months after Robin Williams. Franco Colapinto was 11 years, 10 weeks, and 6 days old when Robin Williams died, and then he was signed 10 years and 16 days later. Jules Bianchi died 11 months and 6 days after Robin Williams. But check this out. This is the craziest part. The 911th prime number is 7109. And Frank Williams died 7 years, 109 days after Robin Williams. And the name Williams equals 719. Again, I almost get chills when I'm talking about this. It's insane how well these are aligned. In our Fibonacci cipher, Yale Skull and Bones equals 1198. And this news was exactly 1,198 weeks after the 9/11 attacks. There's also a riddle connected to former President George H.W. Bush. who was the first man to announce the New World Order. And George Bush was a graduate of Yale and a member of Skull and Bones, just like his son. Well, check out George Bush's age for this story. 116, the upside down 9/11. President George Bush equals 1117. And this week is the 1117th Grand Prix. Brotherhood of Death equals 187. We talked about this number with Kimi Antonelli. This news was also 2,098 days after Bush died. Remember, we had the drunk driving crash on 29/8. Frank Williams' full name sums to 2,098 and 298. Williams Racing and Logan Sargeant's full name, 298. George Bush also has matching gematria with all the members of this news story. There's some intriguing World Trade Center riddles with the number 185 and Frank Williams. This Argentine driver, Argentine and Argentinian both 185. He was 185 days after his birthday when Frank Williams died. And then he was signed 1,003 days later, matching WTC, the abbreviation for the Twin Towers. Colapinto was born exactly 89 weeks after the 9/11 attacks in the nation of Argentina, which equals 89. His full name equals 809. And he was 809 weeks old when George Bush died. Finally, there's a 666 riddle here. Frank Williams died 2,666 days after Robin Williams. Colapinto was 5,666 days old when George Bush died. And George Bush would be 36,606 days old for the Italian Grand Prix. 666 has matching 283 gematria with the moon. This weekend has been 283 orbits of the moon since 9/11. It was also 2 years, 8 months, and 30 days after the death of Frank Williams. And Colapinto is from Argentina, which equals 283. He was born 28 months and 3 days after Logan Sargeant. And Logan Sargeant is currently 283 months old. It's enough to make you dizzy, isn't it? But indeed, this is the script that's playing out. Now, when it comes to, what of this, for instance, is natural numerology and what's all staged, I think when it comes to hiring drivers and placing them on your team, I definitely believe there's someone at the top pulling the strings who knows about this code and is helping things come together like this. The crashes themselves may be the result of that original action, but, you never know. I think, for instance, the Antonelli crash could have been on purpose, because it's connected to this big 187 riddle, but again, I don't know for sure, and I ain't here to tell you what to believe. Next up, we got a really wild story out of the world of music this past week. And when it comes to the music industry, I believe that these deaths are the least likely to be organic in nature. And it's not just for people connected to musicians, but also the musicians themselves. Because in the world of music, it's the only industry where the musician becomes more valuable after they die. If an actor dies, no one goes out and buys all of that actor's movies and watches them. Maybe a couple people do, but When a musician dies, people will buy their music, they'll stream it, because music is more connected to nostalgia than a motion picture. So, what we're looking at here, the death of Mariah Carey's mother, and on the exact same day, her estranged sister dies. Now, Mariah had not even spoken to her sister in like decades. So, is it possible that this was some sort of sacrifice? Well, I believe that could certainly be the case. But let's talk about the numerology that makes this story most extremely suspicious. On the date of this news, August 26th, when Mariah herself let the world know, Mariah was a span of exactly 665 months old, which means it was the first day of her 666th month. In Latin Gematria, the phrase died the same day equals 666, a number connected to the Brotherhood of Death, which has matching Gematria with number of the beast, which most people recognize as 666. And just like everything else we've been looking at, this too is a skull and bones riddle. Just look at the name Mariah. Mariah equals 149 and 223. Notice how the number 1409 is the 223rd prime number. Skull and bones equals 149, while skull and crossbones equals 223. And on the date Mariah announced her double tragedy, it was 322 days after Yale University turned 322 years old. Mariah Carey's most recent album was called Caution, and you have to wonder, was this a sign of caution to her family about what would be occurring in 2024? The first single off this album is called With You, and this is, of course, while Mariah's family was still with her. But notice how the name of this track, Mariah Carey With You, sums to 223. In fact, it's a super match with Skull and Crossbones. That song was released 1,832 days before Yale's big anniversary. And 1832 is the year that the Skull and Bones Society was founded. Again, this news was also exactly 1,198 weeks after 9/11, and Yale Skull and Bones with the 1198. The date of this news had primary numerology of 78. Carey equals 78. So does Allison and Carey, syncing up with both Skull and Bones and Human Sacrifice 780. Notice the phrase, heart is broken. Heart is broken sums to 73 and 206. Just like the word sacrifice. But sacrifice is also 46 in reduction. And this news story broke exactly 46 weeks after Yale's anniversary. But for the next part of this video, I want to explain how this is all a riddle connected to the phrase ritual human sacrifice. And we're going to look at how this phrase is coded into this story in 8 different ciphers. All right? This is, honest to God, this is the craziest ritual human sacrifice riddle I've ever seen. We start with the album Caution, Mariah Carey's last studio album. Notice how this sums to 211. matching ritual human sacrifice in Ordinal. Mariah's news broke 2,110 days after the release of that record. In reverse, ritual human sacrifice is 329. On the date of her news, her sister Allison was exactly 3,290 weeks old. In Satanic, ritual human sacrifice has that special 9/11. And this is kind of connected to the date of the record, right? 11/16. 9/11 is very similar to 11/16 when flipped upside down. Well, look how old Mariah Carey was on that date. Not only was she 18,131 days old, but she was also 131 days before her birthday. Well, ritual human sacrifice equals 131. Her mom and sister were born 8,940 days apart. Now, I guess here's another small stretch. You have 94 here, which is at the middle of this measurement. But more importantly, Skull and Bones equals 894. If you subscribe to the rule of Colel, which states that 1 can be added to or subtracted from any Gematria value, this actually matches ritual human sacrifice in Latin, 895. In English, ritual human sacrifice is 1255. And notice how Mariah Carey was exactly 55 years and 5 months old. The word sacrifice on its own, 55. But lastly, there's actually a riddle connected to Drew Carey. Now, why would this be? Well, Mariah's sister's name was Allison Carey. Game show host Drew Carey's middle name is Allison. What kind of middle name for a man is Allison? I'm sorry, Drew, but your parents must have been high, or, I don't know, maybe practicing the Kabbalah? Anyway, I'm just kidding, guys. I know Allison is a male name, and my apologies to anybody who may be watching, but I'm sure I'm not the first one who's cracked a little fun. But check out Drew Carey's age on the date of this news. It ends with 202. Ritual human sacrifice in Latin ordinal is 202. Total solar eclipse, Skull and Bones, 202. But with capital letters, this is the number that Mariah Carey shares with Drew Carey, both 202. The name Drew Carey is also 141. This was 141 days after the Great American Eclipse. And her sister's name, Allison Ann Carey, equals 141. Drew Carey is famously from the city of Cleveland, Ohio. Now, I haven't talked about Drew Carey on this channel, but one other time. And that was after the previous host of The Price is Right died, Bob Barker. And notice how his death was exactly 1 year to the day before Mariah Carey's news on August 26th. Right? Bob Barker, check this out. Dead on August 26th. The same date we got the news of Mariah Carey. Now that says the 28th, but that was a couple days later. That was an update. So the whole thing with Bob Barker was that it was connected to wrestler Bray Wyatt. Bray Wyatt died just 2 days before Bob Barker. And in the WWE this year, Bray Wyatt's brother, Bo Dallas, he started using Bray Wyatt's entrance theme in his matches just this week. Well, Drew Carey is famously from Cleveland, Ohio. You know, Cleveland rocks. If you ever saw his sitcom, you know all about it. And it just so happens that WWE SummerSlam took place in Cleveland earlier this year. In fact, earlier this month. Cleveland equals 33. And this news was 3 months and 3 days after Drew Carey's birthday and 3 weeks and 3 days after SummerSlam. So there you have it, guys. Huge riddle for Mariah Carey. And of course, it's all about the skull and bones. Now, what also stood out about this is that on August 26th, we also learned of the death of a former WWE World Champion, Sid Eudy, also known as Psycho Sid or Sid Vicious, dead on August 26th, the exact same day. Now, I don't really have any numerology on Sid, but I think the synchronicity here with pro wrestling, Cleveland, Mariah Carey, I think you see how it all comes together a little bit too well. All right, now while I totally butcher my graphics here, let me try this again. All right, next up and finally for this video, we're going to talk about Malik Nabers of the New York Giants. This was a really, really weird news story. Here we see Malik Nabers holding up the number 1 jersey. Now, this was because he was the first round draft pick for the Giants this year. I think he was taken number 6 overall. However, this week, we learned that he will actually be wearing the number 1 jersey. And the number 1 jersey was previously retired for a player named Ray Flaherty. And for the first time ever in the NFL, a number will be unretired so that this guy can wear the number 1. And, I never heard of this guy. I don't know if he's supposed to be some big star, but it seems like a really strange thing to do. So let's talk about the number 1 and how it brings all of this together. Now, normally I talk about numbers a lot larger than 1. In fact, some people may argue that 1 is not even a number. But it's definitely the number that connects these two men. So this news came out on here we go again. It was August 28th when this was published. Updated the following day on the 29th. But the reason it was first told on the 28th is because the name Malik Nabers equals 288, matching the date, the 28th of August. August 28th has ordinal gematria of 253, and on the date of the news, Nabers was exactly 253 months old. This is an important number to the National Football League, which equals 253. But check out the reduction value. The National Football League equals 100. And in numerology, this number breaks down to the number 1, which is the New Jersey number for Malik Nabers. Malik Nabers was born in 2003. And Ray Flaherty was born in 1903, which means they were born 100 years apart. The name Malik equals 100. And when you add their names in reduction, you get another sum of 100. And this news story broke exactly 1 month after Nabers' birthday, when he was 1,100 weeks old. Malik Nabers was born on a date with 58 numerology. This matches the name Ray Flaherty. Now, there's also a huge Formula One riddle embedded within all of this. Because think about it, right? What's the one sport with the number 1 stamped right in it? Well, of course, it's Formula One. And when I decoded this story on the 29th, I thought it was interesting that this guy was getting a new jersey number. And I even thought to myself, what's going to happen in New Jersey? Because New Jersey is neighbors with New York. And this guy's name is Nabers. And then, I kid you not, the next day, we learned about the death of this hockey player in New Jersey. And I'm going to be talking again a little bit about Charles Leclerc in this decode. Leclerc is a driver for Ferrari, and the Italian Grand Prix this weekend is Ferrari's home race. And this weekend's race, on September 1st, is the anniversary of Charles Leclerc's first ever win. So it doesn't mean that Leclerc will win this weekend, but there is a riddle with him. Now, on 9/11, 343 firefighters were killed. And this is the Latin Gematria that Charles Leclerc shares with newcomer Kimi Antonelli. 343. Well, 343 is 7 times 7 times 7. And on the date of the race tomorrow, Malik Nabers will be 7,707 days old. And Leclerc is going for his 7th win. And it's interesting, right? Because 7 is the 4th prime number. And he qualified 4th earlier today. And if I'm not mistaken, it's been 14 weeks since his last win. And we had that riddle with Kimi Räikkönen. Kimi Räikkönen 140 like skull and bones. So is he going to go to first from 4th place? I don't know. I really don't like his chances because the McLarens are so fast and they both qualified ahead of Leclerc. So it would take something special to happen, but it could. This weekend will be Leclerc's 139th Grand Prix. And notice how the name Ray Flaherty has matching 139 Gematria with the number 1. Flaherty even died on a date with 139 numerology. Yeah, 139th start this weekend for Leclerc. So let's talk about the number 19 and its inverse 91, because this proves that there's a connection between this driver and these two athletes here. So when you add their names, Ray Flaherty, Malik Nabers, you get 244. Malik Nabers on its own, also 244. This is the gematria of the number 19, 244. Now, the date written 1/9, the 1st of September, is the 244th day of the year. And that was the date of Leclerc's first win, 1/9/19, or 9/1/19. Ray Flaherty was born on that very date, September 1st, 1/9 or 9/1. And when Flaherty died, he was 90 years, 10 months, and 19 days old, or 1,090 months and 19 days old. Now, the guy Malik will be wearing his jersey number. Malik equals 19 and 91. Malik was born 9 years and 10 days after Flaherty died. When he took Flaherty's number, it was 10,999 days after his death, or 1 month, 9 days after the anniversary. Flaherty's full name equals 91. Their names added together equal 109. And the date August 28th equals 91. 9/1 is also 1 month, 9 days before Yale's anniversary, on the date 10/9, or 109. Now, this also connects to another guy named Flaherty. Here we're talking about the football player Ray, but there's also an actor named Joe. And what I just realized is that this connects to the Bob Barker story. So when I decoded the death of Bob Barker, there was a strong riddle with Happy Gilmore. And I talked a lot about Happy Gilmore in this decode. It's all synced up with Adam Sandler. And now another Happy Gilmore movie is currently in development. Well, one of the stars of Happy Gilmore, or actors anyway, was Joe Flaherty. And Joe Flaherty died on April 1st earlier this year. Well, notice how Joe Flaherty, his age was ended in 235, syncing up with Raymond Paul Flaherty, 235. Ray Flaherty would have been 44,044 days old when Joe passed away. Well, Ray died 44 days before his own birthday. And now this week, Malik Nabers took his jersey number on a date with 44 numerology. He'll be wearing the number 1, which equals 44. In fact, the number 44 has matching 1512 Gematria with number 1 jersey. The 44th prime number is 193. August 28th was 44,193 days after Ray Flaherty was born. The circuit where this weekend's race will be taking place at Monza, it's known as the Temple of Speed. It's almost like to Formula One what Daytona is to NASCAR. Well, notice how Temple of Speed equals both 44 and 193. And then Ray Flaherty was born in the year 1903. And when Joe Flaherty was born, the actor, it was on the date leaving 193 days in the year. Malik Nabers was 193 months old when Charles Leclerc got his first win. On the date of Sunday's race, Malik Nabers will be exactly 1,101 weeks old. Ray Flaherty equals 1101. The same digits found in Raymond Flaherty and the World Trade Center, which of course was brought down on the date leaving 111 days in the state of New York, which equals 111. And New York, well, of course, that's the team that Malik Nabers will be playing for. Notice how the name Flaherty has double gematria of 121. Flaherty died 10 months and 21 days after the date August 28th. But check out how this Sunday's race will be on Flaherty's 121st birthday. Furthermore, it falls on the date leaving 121 days in the year. And Charles Leclerc, the only driver from Monaco, where he got his last win. But of course, there is an extreme 9/11 riddle here. As we start to wrap this edition of the Superstream up. This news was 1 month and 19 days before Leclerc's birthday, and the race will be 10 months and 19 days before the anniversary of Flaherty's death. Well, check this out. When Leclerc got his first ever F1 win, it was on Ray Flaherty's 116th birthday, giving us the upside-down 9/11. Sunday's race falls 1 month and 16 days after the anniversary of Bianchi's death. Remember, that was Charles Leclerc's godfather. Malik Nabers will be 1,100 weeks and 6 days old for the race, which falls 10 months and 16 days after Charles Leclerc's 10-16 birthday. His first win was at Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps, which equals 10-16 and 119. And then we find Charles was born 4,911 weeks after Ray Flaherty for another 9/11. We saw a similar 185 connection earlier with Franco Colapinto and Frank Williams. Well, it's the same thing with the Flahertys and Charles Leclerc. The name Raymond Flaherty also with that 185. And Joe Flaherty dead 10,850 days after Ray Flaherty, who died 1,185 days before Leclerc was born. Leclerc's age for Malik Nabers' birth also matched Malik Nabers' age for this news story, 2111. But finally, let's wrap this up with more Skull and Bones numerology. Now, this year, because it's a leap year, September 1st is the 245th day on the calendar. Skull and Bones Society has this 245. Ray Flaherty died 322 days after his birthday. And now Sunday's race will be 322 days after Leclerc's birthday. On top of that, Charles will also be 322 months old. And remember, I talked about how his name syncs up with 9/11 because 343 firefighters died on 9/11? Well, New York City Fire Department sums to 322. I thought that was interesting. The name Ray Flaherty is also very close to the year that Skull and Bones was founded. But this 1831 also connects to Yale University because it's the 282nd prime number. Yale established on the 282nd day of the year. The Brotherhood of Death, 2082. This race will also be 60 months and 1 day after Charles Leclerc's first win, which was a day after the death of Antoine Hubert. And the name Charles Leclerc equals 61. And what I forgot to mention this whole time is that Charles Leclerc drives the number 16 car, which is an upside-down 91. So with all of this 9-1, 19, 9-11, I think you guys get it, right? What's scary is that, like, I had to take stuff out of these decodes because I didn't want this to run on for too long. It just seems like the more you dig, the more that easily aligns. And again, I did put a little wager on Leclerc to win for Monza tomorrow because I got him at 14-1, which is another thing I missed when I was talking about the 14 connections with Kimi Räikkönen. But yeah, like I said, he qualified 4th, so it doesn't look like he's going to win. And I'm not too confident now, but if he does, it's like, wow, that's a little bit too crazy. And I would almost be doing too well at F1 at this point because I picked the Piastri win at 18-1 a few weeks ago. So I won a bunch there, and then I bet on Lando Norris to win last week. And that wasn't a very good bet. It wasn't even money. But he was the only one with interesting numbers. And sure enough, Lando won. So am I really going to win 3 in a row? It seems unlikely. You know, I don't want to turn into one of these charlatans who always makes a pick and then that pick is wrong. But my record with racing is pretty wild. So we'll see what pans out. Maybe now that I made a video on it, you know, nothing's really going to happen, as that seems to be the trend. All right, everybody. So that'll wrap it up for this edition of the Super Stream. Thanks to everybody for chiming in, whether you're watching live or archived. I always appreciate those likes, shares, subscribes, all that good YouTube stuff. Of course, a channel like this, the algorithm's not too friendly to begin with. But when it comes to the world of numerology, I truly think there are few things more fascinating than this. So if you know anybody who's starting to wake up to this side of reality and notice that things may not always be what they seem, perhaps when the time is right, they can see. All right, everyone. Peace, love, God bless. And again, we'll talk to you next time. See ya.